I'm an endocrinologist by training, so I do diabetes, endocrinology, metabolism, and nutrition. As I mentioned, I practice in a community setting. I'm a Jocelyn Affiliate Center at Melrose Wakefield Hospital, and majority of my patients have diabetes. They're also obese. I see a lot of high cholesterol, high blood pressure. And I think I had a special advantage because I was born and raised in India. So I've been familiar with spiritualism, yoga, Ayurveda. My family is spiritual. They've been vegetarian. I've been vegetarian all my life. And then when I went on to do training, I did my medical school training in Sion in Mumbai. And then I came here, I did my residency in Danbury, Connecticut. And I did a combined research clinical training at Harvard, BU, and VA. And for the last 2 years, I've been practicing in the community. And even though I practice modern medicine, I try to incorporate nutrition. Just prescription of medications is not enough because I start to look at the patient's lifestyle, what they're eating, because I believe majority of the diseases stem from what you put in your mouth. They're chronic conditions, and the underlying reason is inflammation. So,
that's the clock.
yeah. So, as many of you may know, in India we talk about different kinds of food, the tamasic food, the rajasic food, and the sattvic food. For diabetes and obesity that I do, it's very important to eat sattvic food. But how do you present that to a patient who doesn't even remotely know what you're talking about? So I start by taking a good dietary history, and then I approach them by saying, try to eliminate meat, red meat, try to become vegetarian. If I tell them outright, you can absolutely not eat this, this, and that, I will never see them. And the other problem I face is I'm the sole person in the community who's saying this. So when I initially bring this up, they're like, what are you talking about? So I can't eat eggs? So what about fish? What about beef? What about bacon? And when you're telling them what these can cause, they're shocked. And this is only a few miles out in Boston. And this is not even patients, these are also my colleagues. So my daughter, as a personal example, she had severe asthma, and we started giving her homeopathy remedies. And one of my colleagues said, so that's snake oil, right? So that is the awareness you have here, just outside of Boston. Can you imagine the awareness elsewhere in the country? So I think reaching out in the community is going to be a huge piece of spreading the awareness. It is not enough that this is available at MGH or Harvard. This has to be available elsewhere so that representatives can go in the community and teach not only the patients, but also the physicians what sort of alternative medicine is. So some of the examples that I give my patients is, there's a large study that many of you may know. It's called the Adventist study. It is one of the largest studies of North America that has looked at diet, lifestyle, mortality in the Seventh-day Adventists. It started in 1960, it's an ongoing study. And the earlier study looked at about thousands of patients, and the concept of the study was these Adventists ate very little meat. The whole nutrition was about eating more pulses, legumes, nuts, and they found that there was a reduction, 70%, of prostate cancer, and that was linked mostly to having nuts and soy milk in your diet. They also found lung cancer, breast cancer, coronary artery disease, substantial reduction when they compared it to people who were not following the same diet. Not many of even my nutrition colleagues, I trained at BU, which has a heavy nutrition research center as well as staff. So I tell my patients, eat a lot of beans. 5 cups of beans is like eating acarbose, which is a drug that I would prescribe to diabetics, and it brings your sugars down. Become vegan and your sugars will come down. Anecdotally, I can tell you, the patients or my staff who are diabetics and have become vegetarian or vegan, they have told me they felt drastically different within weeks of changing their diet. Not only some of them have successfully come off of insulin, they feel better overall. Arthritis has improved, their overall level of happiness has improved. There is also, and you talk about evidence-based medicine, I've trained that way. I've done research, I did my training here. Everything is about show me the RCT, where is the evidence, is it statistically significant? There is evidence that might not be that strong, but so for example, there's a rat study, and what they did was they gave equal amount of animal protein, and they looked at the kidneys of the rat, and the same weight-based protein came from a plant-based, so let's say tofu. And within 2 hours, there was significant inflammation in the rat's kidneys of ingesting animal protein. And there was nothing when the same amount of protein was ingested from a plant-based diet. I also talk about, with my patients, things like, we talk about supplements, and I know you all said, the Ayurvedic practitioners, that you can't take one supplement and decide that whether or not it's going to work. But again, anecdotally, when I have said to my patients, try the amla, the Indian gooseberry, it works just like a diabetic agent. It's called glipizide or sulfonylurea, and you see a significant reduction in their sugars. It costs cents a day. Rather than spending $200 on Lantus prescription, if I could get away with using that, where is the downside? And that is my message to them. Okay, there is no evidence, but what are you going to lose by just changing your diet? Eat more beans, take a little amla, eat a little flax. It is not going to harm you. So I think the challenges we face are multiple. It's a physician lack of awareness or general sense of thinking of Ayurveda as beauty treatment or snake oil in your drugs. It's not that. We need to raise the awareness. So as Dr. Shah was saying, that you need to have this kind of a training, or at least an elective, even for allopathy doctors. I want to be able to practice a little bit of Ayurveda, but I had no training, no exposure whatsoever, being in India as a medical student, being a resident or a fellow here, trained here in Boston. So I think that is a big step. It can be obviously an elective, you're not going to get a full degree, because that enhances our understanding. And the other thing I think is, again, some of you have alluded, is that if I wanted to refer some of my patients who come, the first question is, do you believe in acupuncture? Do you believe in Chinese medicine? Are you open? They are looking for open physicians, but they want to take my advice, but they also want to do other things. They don't want me to be dismissive. I will be dismissive if I don't know what it entails. And I'm worried. Is there lead in what they're ingesting? Is there mercury in what they're ingesting? A lot of it is also ignorance, so we need to raise the awareness. And there are a couple other things I think we can do. Is some of the clinicians might know there's an up-to-date for medicine. And yes, it is all evidence-based, but if there was maybe a website where someone could at least read about basics, maybe it'd be up-to-date for yoga, up-to-date for Ayurveda. I know that there are different kinds of yogas. What is this kind of yoga? What is that? If you Google, it's like my patients Googling and telling me, do you think this drug is better? And I say, you either take my advice or Dr. Google's advice. So Google is not reliable. We need to come up with something that is scientific and backed by leaders. So maybe that is one way to go. And the other place where I think we can raise awareness is all these conferences that we go to. So I go to endocrinology conference, diabetes conferences. Maybe we can have yoga or Ayurveda experts come there and talk about just endocrine, what it does in diabetes. Focus, because I'm not going to care about what it does for cancer patients. I'm not an oncologist. So maybe that is one way to target how to penetrate this sort of closed-mindedness. And I will just say this, that yes, we say that modern medicine has made our lives longer. We don't have infectious diseases, communicable diseases as much as we used to have years ago. But we find that we are living longer, but we are living unhealthy lives. And just giving patients more drugs is not going to make them healthy. And I think the key piece here is the integrative medicine make us live healthier, how to live healthier, longer lives. And I think that's where all of us should unite and do something different.
Thank you.
So that's it.